Hello, and welcome to the second episode of Boquete Weekly, recorded on November 29th, 2025. I'm Sean Murphy, and this is your source for local news in English from Boquete, Chiriqui Province, and Panama. This episode is brought to you by Surfshark VPN. Living in beautiful Boquete means enjoying mountain air, incredible coffee, and a slower pace of life. But let's be honest, it can also mean frustration when you're trying to access banking at home, stream your favorite shows on TV, or manage accounts that suddenly think you're in the wrong country. That's where today's sponsor, Surfshark VPN, comes in. Surfshark lets you browse the internet as if you were back in the United States or anywhere else in the world. Need to check your US bank account? Need to stream Netflix like you're in Miami? Access services that are geographically restricted? Surfshark makes it simple and secure. But here's what really sets Surfshark apart. Unlimited device connections. That means your laptop, your phone, your tablet, and even your smart TV can all connect under one account. No need to choose which devices get coverage. And with military-grade encryption, your online activity stays private, whether you're checking email, at a Boquete coffee shop, managing finances, or just browsing the web. Right now, Surfshark is offering 24 months for $45.63. That's $1.69 per month when you buy 24 at once. And listeners to this show get an extra 3 months free when you sign up using the link boquetedeals.online/VPN. Before we begin, an important note. Boquete Weekly provides English summaries and translations of news stories originally published in Spanish-language media outlets, including La Prensa, El Panamá América, La Estrella de Panamá, TV in Panama, and other sources. I am not the original reporter of these stories. All content is based on publicly available news sources, and I make every effort to accurately represent the original reporting. The views and information presented in this source material do not necessarily reflect my own opinions. In Latin American news, President Trump says Venezuelan airspace should be considered closed. U.S. President Donald Trump said on Saturday the airspace above and surrounding Venezuela should be considered, quote, closed in its entirety, end quote, but gave no further details, stirring anxiety and confusion in Caracas as his administration ramps up pressure on President Nicolas Maduro's government. Quote, to all airlines, pilots, drug dealers, and human traffickers, please consider, begin capitalization, the airspace above and around Venezuela to be closed in its entirety, end capitalization, end quotes. Trump said in a Truth Social post. U.S. officials contacted by Reuters were surprised by Trump's announcement and unaware of any ongoing U.S. military operations to enforce a closure of Venezuelan airspace. The Pentagon did not respond to requests for comment, and the White House did not provide any further explanation. In a statement Saturday afternoon, Venezuela's government condemned Trump's comments, describing them as, quote, a colonialist threat, end quote, against the South American country's sovereignty and incompatible with international law. The U.S. president's post, quote, represents a hostile, unilateral, and arbitrary act incompatible with the principles of international law, end quote, the statement said. David Deptula, a retired lieutenant general who commanded a no-fly zone over northern Iraq in 1998 and 1999, said Trump's announcement raises more concerns than it answers. Imposing a no-fly zone over Venezuela could require significant resources and planning, depending on the goals of the airspace closure, he said. Quote, the devil is in the details, unquote, Deptula said. The Trump administration has been weighing Venezuela-related options to combat what it has portrayed as Maduro's role in supplying illegal drugs that have killed Americans. The socialist Venezuelan president has denied any links to the illegal drug trade. Reuters has reported that the options under U.S. consideration include an attempt to overthrow Maduro, and that the U.S. is poised for a new phase of operations after a massive military buildup in the Caribbean and nearly 3 months of strikes on suspected drug boats off Venezuela's coast. Trump also authorized covert CIA operations within the country. Maduro, in power since 2013, has contended that Trump is seeking to oust him and that Venezuelan citizens and the country's military will resist any such attempt. Trump told military service members earlier this week that the U.S. would, quote, very soon, end quote, begin land operations to stop suspected Venezuelan drug traffickers. Caracas residents who spoke to Reuters criticized Trump's announcement. Quote, I think it's unfair because people need to travel to work, to do business, to see their families, and us Venezuelans aren't at fault for these situations, end quote, said Manuel Romero, cooking assistant. Carmen Castillo, a lawyer, said she worried that many people will not be able to visit their families outside Venezuela for the holidays. Quote, we're confined here in Caracas, in Venezuela. Of course it affects us, end quote, she said. The Venezuelan government said the U.S. was demonstrating, quote, colonial ambitions, end quote, in Latin America, and called on the international community to reject what it described as an immoral act of aggression. Iran, a Venezuelan ally that was bombed by the United States earlier this year, denounced Trump's announcement as, quote, a serious breach of international law and a threat to global aviation safety, end quote, according to the Iranian state news agency IRNA. Trump's announcement also amounted to a unilateral suspension of the migrant deportation flights on which nearly 14,000 Venezuelans have recently returned home from the U.S., the Venezuelan government statement added. Flights have been taking place twice a week in recent months amid the Trump administration's immigration crackdown. Maduro and high-ranking officials in his government, some combination of whom appear almost daily on state television, have decreed U.S. imperialism in their recent comments, but do not single out Trump by name, as the Venezuelan government may be trying to de-escalate tensions, according to security and diplomatic sources. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has previously been the focus of Venezuelan government ire, but even references to him have decreased in recent weeks. The U.S. boat bombings have led to stepped-up surveillance by authorities in the remote northeastern Venezuelan state of Sucre, with increased patrols by security agencies and ruling party supporters stoking fear among locals. 4 residents and 1 recent visitor said GPS signals in Venezuela have also been affected in recent weeks amid the U.S. buildup. Trump's announcement on Saturday followed a warning last week from the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration the major airlines faced a, quote, potentially hazardous situation, end quote, when flying over Venezuela due to a, quote, worsening security situation and heightened military activity in or around, end quote, the country. Venezuela revoked operating rights for 6 major international airlines that had suspended flights to the country after the FAA warning. This story was originally reported in Reuters. Hard-right former lawmaker Jose Antonio Cast leads in Chile's polarizing presidential runoff. A hard-right former lawmaker and admirer of U.S. President Donald Trump held the upper hand as Chile headed to a polarizing presidential runoff election against a member of Chile's Communist Party representing the incumbent government. Jose Antonio Cast, an ultra-conservative lawyer opposed to abortion and same-sex marriage, appears to be in pole position after nearly 70% of voters went to right-wing candidates in Sunday's first round. Many Chileans worry about organized crime, illegal immigration, and unemployment in one of Latin America's safest and most prosperous nations. The father of 9, who pushed his traditional Catholic beliefs and nostalgia for aspects of Chile's brutal dictatorship into the political mainstream after founding his own Republican Party in 2019, came in second with nearly 24% of the vote. He campaigned on plans to crack down on gang violence, build a giant border wall, and deport tens of thousands of immigrants. Jeanette Jara, a former labor minister in President Gabriel Boric's left-wing government, eked out a narrower-than-expected lead with 27% of the vote. She wants to expand Chile's social safety net and tackle money laundering and drug trafficking to stem organized crime. Neither contender received more than 50% of the overall vote count, sending the polls to a second round of voting on December 14th. The mood was ebullient at Cast's campaign headquarters early Monday, where young Chileans wrapped in national flags drank beer and rolled cigarettes as workers took down the stage where Cast had pledged a radical transformation in the country's security. Quote, we need a safe candidate, someone with a firm hand to bring economic growth, attract investment, create jobs, strengthen the police, and give them support, end quote, said Ignacio Rojas, 20. Quote, Chile isn't safe anymore, and he'll change that, end quote. The results seem to extend a growing regional shift across Latin America, as popular discontent with the economy simmers and right-wing challengers take over from leftist politicians who shot to power in the wake of the pandemic but largely failed to deliver on their lofty promises of social change and more equitable distribution of wealth. Quote, economies are not growing. There are no new jobs, and people remember that 10 years ago they used to pay lower prices for almost everything, end quote, said Patricio Navia, a Chilean analyst and professor at New York University. Quote, voters are upset with governments all over the region, end quote. Conservatives led the pack in Chile's 8-candidate field, with populist businessman and celebrity economist Franco Parisi surprising pundits by securing 20% of the votes and third place, reflecting the power of his anti-establishment message. He also ran a tough law and order campaign, vowing to plant landmines across Chile's porous northern border to prevent people from crossing. Another 14% of the votes went to Johannes Kaiser, a libertarian congressman and former YouTube provocateur who campaigned as an even more radical alternative to caste. Chile's traditional center-right coalition landed in fifth place, with establishment candidate Evelyn Matei winning 12.5% of the vote. Not all of the divided right is guaranteed to go to caste, whose conservative moral values have previously alienated voters concerned about the rollback of hard-won rights for women and the LGBTQ community. His promise to cut up $6 billion in public spending within his first 18 months has also been criticized by traditional conservative politicians as unrealistic. He has lost 2 presidential races before, but it's unlikely that many voters who supported Kaiser's plans to deport immigrants who entered the country illegally to prison in El Salvador, or Matei's plans to consider bringing back the death penalty, would vote for a lifelong member of Chile's hard-line Communist Party, which supports autocratic governments in Venezuela and Cuba. There were no other left-wing frontrunners, as all 6 parties in Chile's governing coalition threw their weight behind Jara. After learning of the election results late Sunday, Matei rushed to Cast Party headquarters to profess her support for her right-wing rival. Quote, "Chile needs a sharp change of direction," end quote, she said. Kaiser also promised to back Cast, saying his Libertarian Party would, quote, "ensure that a sound doctrine and defense of freedom are not abandoned," end quote. Parisi was coy after the results came out, saying, quote, "We don't give anyone a blank check," end quote. Quote, "The burden of proof lies with both candidates," end quote, said the political outsider, whose voters eschew elites on the left and the right. Quote, "They have to win people over," end quote. Economic travails and fervent anti-incumbent sentiment appear to have fueled a gradual pendulum shift away from the left-wing leaders who were ascendant across the region just a few years ago. In Argentina, radical libertarian President Javier Milei, elected in late 2023 on a vow to break with years of left-leaning populism, has doubled down on his close bond with Trump and reshaped Argentina's foreign policy in line with the U.S. Elections during the last year in Ecuador, El Salvador, and Panama have kept right-wing leaders in office, while in Bolivia, restive voters outraged over a currency crisis punished the movement towards socialism party and elected a conservative opposition candidate for the first time in nearly 20 years last month. Gains for the right could buoy the U.S. as it competes for regional influence with China, some analysts say, with a new crop of leaders keen for American investment. Chile is the world's largest copper producer and home to vast resources of other minerals, key to the global energy transition. Like many hopeful leftists 4 years ago, Boric, a former student activist elected on the heels of Chile's 2019 mass protest over widening inequality, saw his ambitions to raise taxes on the rich and adopt one of the world's most progressive constitutions run into major legislative opposition. Analysts warned that Cast could face the same fate if he caved to his more radical allies or pushed morally conservative measures. Although early legislative election results indicated that right-wing parties would hold a majority in the 155-member lower house of Congress, left-wing parties appeared to hold a slight edge in the Senate on Monday. Quote, "There is a path forward for Cast," end quote, Navia said, but, quote, "if he tries to govern as a radical right-winger, he will hit a wall, just like the outgoing President Gabriel Boric did," end quote. This story was originally reported in the Associated Press. This show is produced in partnership with TripAdvisor by Viator. Right now, the producers of this show have curated a collection of unique and fun experiences in Boquete that you can book at boquetedeals.online. It's a wonderful way to support this show and to find exciting and fun activities to participate in your local community, such as coffee tours, bicycle tours, hiking, and other fun Boquete activities. If you would like to support this show in a more direct fashion, please listen at the end of the show for details on how you can make a donation. In Panamanian news, on November 11th, Panama reported the historic seizure of 13,508 kilos of cocaine, valued on the market at about $200 million. Panamanian authorities reported Wednesday the seizure of a large shipment of 1,162 packages of drugs destined for Spain in an area of the Panamanian Caribbean. The illicit substances were found, quote, "hidden inside a container bound for Spain," end quote, during a raid on a port in the Atlantic coast carried out by security forces and the Anti-Drug Prosecutor's Office of the Public Ministry, the investigating body said on X. The report did not specify the type of drug seized or the total weight, although the packages of narcotics typically weigh 1 kilogram, and cocaine is the most commonly trafficked drug through Panamanian ports. On November 11th, Panama also reported the historic seizure of 13,508 kilograms of cocaine valued at approximately $200 million on the street from a tugboat intercepted in the Panamanian Pacific waters en route to North America from Colombia. In this seizure, 10 people, nationals of Venezuela, Ecuador, Nicaragua, and Colombia, were arrested and have been brought before the appropriate authorities to be charged with international drug trafficking. Panama is a transit country for drugs produced in South America destined for the United States, the world's largest consumer of cocaine, and Europe. According to official data, Panama seized approximately 80 tons of illicit substances in 2024. This story was originally reported in Panamá América. The Agricultural Marketing Institute announced the Christmas fair schedule for the week of December 2nd through 6th, 2025, with sales points throughout the country so that Panamanians can purchase basic Christmas baskets at affordable prices. During a press conference, President Jose Raul Molino reported that the MIA is working at full speed to guarantee the distribution of 500,000 Christmas boxes, which will reach families throughout the country with products such as hams from Veraguas, Acerno, and Chiriqui. In Chiriqui, the Christmas fair will take place on the following dates. On December 2nd, it will take place in the Plaza del Ferrocarril in Bugaba, Terrenos de la Feria, Puerto Armores in Baru, and Alcaldía del Renacimiento in Rio Serrano. On December 3rd, the festival will take place at Frente de la Feria de las Flores in Boquete, Plaza de Dolega, and Parque de Gualaca. On December 4th in Chiriqui, the locations will be Parque Central de Alange, Club de Leones de Volcán, and Parque Central de Bocarón. On December 5th, the locations will be Cancha Comunal de San Feliz, Parque de Remedios, Cancha Comunal de Tole, and Cancha Comunal de San Lorenzo. Those are the dates for the Christmas festival in your local region. This story was originally reported by Telemetro. Panamanian airline Copa Airlines continues to operate flights to Venezuela this Saturday, November 29th, amid the tension in the region. U.S. President Donald Trump warned that, quote, airlines, pilots, drug traffickers, and human traffickers, end quote, should consider Venezuelan airspace, quote, to be completely closed, end quote. However, there has been no specific request to suspend flights so far. The airline confirmed in a statement this afternoon that flight operations over Venezuelan airspace remain open and that they are operating with high levels of alert and caution only during daylight hours. Copa Airlines emphasized that it is in constant communication with the Federal Aviation Administration, which it reiterated that it has not changed its official alert level or regulatory position. It was reported that any changes to this situation will be immediately communicated to passengers, and travelers with flights to and from Caracas are advised to stay informed through the airline's official channels. This story was originally reported by La Prensa. Moving on to local Chiriqui news, Copa Airlines is expanding its flights to David to strengthen tourism and is promoting the Gulf of Chiriqui and Boquete in its stopover program. Starting in October, Copa Airlines increased its flight capacity to the city of David in Chiriqui by 40%. This was confirmed in a press conference on November 12th in the western province of Panama. Diego Bermudez, sales director of Copa Airlines, explained that the increase is part of the airline's strategy to strengthen connectivity between Panama City and the western part of the country. Quote, we are talking about a 40% increase in capacity year over year, with between 23 and 25 weekly flights. We will have 3 daily flights, and on some days, especially weekends, up to 4 daily flights, end quote, Bermudez explained. The executive explained that this increase was implemented in October and is now available for all future bookings. Quote, now the task is to promote it and ensure those flights remain full, end quote. According to Bermudez, the profile of the traveler to David is diverse. Tourists and business people who take advantage of the air connectivity to visit the region. Quote, 1 in 4 passengers, around 25%, has an international origin, mainly from the United States, Colombia, Mexico, and other countries, end quote. The Panama-David-Panama route has great growth potential, and it's estimated that by 2025 it will have served 230,000 travelers. Round-trip airfare starts at $99. Carla Guillen, senior manager of products and sales at Copa Airlines, explained that the stopover program aims to encourage tourism to the interior of the country, including the province of Chiriqui. Quote, the stopover program offers travelers the opportunity to visit 2 destinations for the price of 1. Chiriqui has always been included in the offers we have for our passengers, end quote. Currently, international travelers who opt for the stopover come from Argentina, Ecuador, the United States, and Brazil. The program has evolved remarkably since its launch more than 2 decades ago. Quote, it started with around 10,000 passengers a year. Today we expect to close 2025 with around 185,000 passengers using the stopover product. Of those, 30% travel to the interior, mainly Chiriqui, and 70% stay in Panama City. In 2024 alone, the program was used by 160,188 travelers, representing 8% of tourists connecting to Panama via the airline. The program generates an economic impact of nearly $900 million for the country. Nguyen explained that the goal for next year is to increase average stays from 3 to 5 or 6 days, strengthening the national tourism offering. Currently, the Bambito Hotel and Panamonte Hotel are part of the stopover program in Chiriqui, and the airline hopes to add more local businesses after its visit to the province. Quote, European and American visitors who take advantage of the stopover program seek cultural experiences, gastronomy, nature, and beaches. That's why we promote destinations like the Gulf of Chiriqui and Boquete, which have much to offer and complement the country's tourism offerings, Nguyen pointed out. Jorge Tovar, president of the Chamber of Commerce, Industries, Agriculture, and Tourism of Chiriqui for the period of 2024 to 2026, expressed his satisfaction with the inclusion of the program in the province, considering it a recognition of the effort of the private sector. Quote, the program represents recognition of the work of Chiriqui entrepreneurs, generates confidence in the airline, and contributes to the province having more and better connectivity, end quote. He announced that various activities will be developed soon and that the number of flights is likely to increase again for the World of Coffee 2026 event, the most important specialty coffee fair in the world, which will be held in Panama in October and will be hosted for the first time by a Latin American country. This story was originally reported by La Estrella de Panama. Sofia Arujo from Chiriqui triumphs in the National Oratory Competition with a call to transform education in Panama. Sofia Arujo, a student from the Nuestra Señora de los Ángeles School in the province of Chiriqui, was the winner of the 20th edition of the National Oratory Contest. With her speech about inequality, distrust, and dishonesty in the face of a constitution that represents a just Panama, Arujo demanded an urgent educational re-engineering that guarantees the quality and continuous technological training of students and teachers to form a knowledge-based society. The Anayanse Theater at the Atlapa Convention Center was the setting for this gala, in which 15 young people participated with the central theme, quote, Constitutional Literacy, the transformative power of youth in the construction of a new constitution for the Panama we dream of, end quote. Eduardo Valdera from the Metropolitan Adventist School took second place, and Ricardo Hendrick from the Santa Maria Academy came in third. The 15 finalists of the competition prepared at the National Oratory Academy for 35 days. They received specialized training that include practical workshops and master classes to perfect their communication skills with the goal of becoming the best representatives of Panamanian youth. The National Oratory Contest is organized by the Ministry of Education and the Mas Movil Foundation. The story was originally reported in La Prensa. During the ordinary session of the Provincial Council of Chiriqui, the Panama Maritime Chamber, or CNP, reaffirmed its support for the Puerto Baru project, noting that this project represents a strategic opportunity to improve national connectivity, decentralize port development, and generate direct and indirect employment in the western region of the country. President of the association, René Gomez, emphasized that Puerto Baru responds to a comprehensive vision of development, aligned with other structural investments that the country is currently promoting, such as the gas pipeline, the Indio River water project, and the port developments in Telfos and Corozal, which demonstrate a plan aimed at modernizing the national logistic infrastructure and strengthening the country's competitiveness as a maritime regional hub. Quote, Puerto Baru not only expands the country's port access, but also becomes a strategic solution for logistical resilience, regional competitiveness, and the continuity of national trade. End quote. The Maritime Chamber emphasized that multipurpose ports are a key link for effective connectivity between Panama City and the provinces. These ports will allow the flow of goods in both directions, strengthen operational resilience to contingencies on the Pan American Highway, and consolidate a more decentralized and robust port network. During the meeting, The Minister of Commerce and Industries, Julio Molto, reiterated the national government's support for the project, highlighting its potential impact to attract investment, generate employment, and consolidate Chiriqui as a logistics hub of the Pacific. Furthermore, representatives from the 105 community boards and the 15 mayors of the province of Chiriqui signed an institutional letter addressed to Judge Maria Cristina Censanzirola of the Third Chamber of Administrative and Labor Litigation of the Supreme Court of Justice, requesting a timely legal ruling to allow progress on the construction of Puerto Baru as part of national interest. However, for these developments to achieve a true social impact, the CMP emphasized that human resource development must begin immediately. The story was originally reported in La Prensa. Moving on to sports, the Panamanian artistic gymnastics team performed outstandingly at the Bolivarian Games, according to a statement from the Panamanian Olympic Committee. The athletes were crowned champions in the team event and secured the top prize in the individual competition, demonstrating the unstoppable rise of this sport in the country. The first victory was achieved in the team event, where the Isthmian delegation won the gold medal. The 5 athletes, Alia Lide, Ana Gabriela Gutierrez, Hilary Jaron, Carla Navas, and Tatiana Tapia, dazzled with their coordination and execution, adding up to a total score of 196,895 points, the institution added. This elite score allowed Panama to surpass regional powers such as Colombia, which took silver with 190,960 points, and the host nation of Peru, which took bronze with 183,828 points. The Golden Day continued in the individual all-around competition after gymnast Alia Lide demonstrated mastery and consistency, securing the second gold for Panama with a score of 50,865 points. Her teammates also shone with remarkable performances. Tatiana Tapia placed in a solid 5th with 48,666 points, and Carla Navas reached 7th place with 47,832 points, cementing the top presence for the Bolivarian top 10. For the COP, this double gold not only adds to prestige for Panamanian sports, but also inspires youth and confirms the talent and dedication of these high-performance athletes. This story was originally reported in Prensa Latina. Now for your local weather. Based on available information, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration is warning of a weak La Nina, and the Panama Canal Authority forecasts above average rainfall through the end of 2025. This means the rainy season in Chiriqui could extend beyond its typical mid-December end date, possibly continuing until the end of the year. For the immediate forecast, listeners should expect continued rainfall with temperatures remaining warm. The transition to the dry season may be delayed as much as 2 months due to La Nina conditions affecting the region. Residents and visitors should be prepared for intermittent rain through December and possibly into early 2026, with a typical dry season potentially starting later than usual in February. This forecast was sourced from the U.S. National Weather Service. That's all for this week on Boquete Weekly. If you enjoyed this show, please tell a friend about Boquete Weekly or leave us a review on Spotify or Apple Podcast. If you would like to make a donation to help support the show, you can make a regular monthly donation at patreon.com/boquete in exchange for listener perks and a chance to have input as to the content of this show. Or you can go to buymeacoffee/boquete and make a one-time donation for as little as $1. Even the small donations help me bring this show to you. Remember, all news stories are sourced from Panamanian or English language publications, and listeners should consult the original articles mentioned in this program for further details. I'm Sean Murphy saying thank you for listening. The theme music you're listening to is Wholesome by Kevin MacLeod, licensed under Creative Commons.